I kind of realized how powerful Tupac and I was. You know what I'm saying? Because we two individual people, we raised a coastal beat.
Imagine this for a moment. What if the biggest mystery in hip-hop history was never really a mystery at all? What if the truth about who pulled the trigger on the most iconic rapper of the 90s was recorded, hidden, and ignored for decades? No headlines, no breaking news, just a quiet confession sitting on a tape, waiting for the right time to be heard, because on one hot September night in Las Vegas, 1996, hip-hop didn't just lose a star, it lost its innocence, and what happened next would change music, street culture, and the industry forever. These were the final reflections connected to a war that had already consumed hip-hop from the inside, a war between East and West, between ego and survival, between fame and the streets that created it. Biggie spoke about it, Pac lived inside it. But what neither of them could have known was that years later, a hidden recording would surface, one that finally pointed to who fired the shots that ended Tupac Shakur's life. To understand that night, we have to go back to September 7, 1996. Las Vegas was glowing, neon lights everywhere. The city was alive, inside the MGM Grand. Thousands of fans watched Mike Tyson destroy Bruce Seldon in the very first round. The crowd exploded, celebrities filled the arena, cameras flashed, energy was at its peak. And right there in the middle of it all was Tupac Shakur at that moment. Tupac wasn't just a rapper, he was the face of West Coast hip-hop. Death Row Records was unstoppable, albums were flying off shelves, the streets respected them. The industry feared them, and Suge Knight stood beside Tupac like a king guarding his crown. That night felt untouchable, powerful, dangerous, but power always attracts problems. After the fight, Tupac and
Orlando Anderson is absolutely, positively the murderer of Tupac Shakur. Sean Combs was associated back in New York with a high-level drug dealer named Eric Martin. He was known as Zip. Well, Zip was getting his cocaine and his PCP from a West Coast gang member who was a Crip named Keefe D. Keefe D's nephew is Orlando Anderson.
His crew moved through the MGM Grand Casino lobby. And that's when everything shifted. Tupac spotted a familiar face, Orlando Anderson. A known member of the Southside Crips. To most people, this would mean nothing. But in Tupac's world, it meant everything. Earlier that year, Anderson and others were accused of robbing a Death Row affiliate at a Lakewood mall. They took a Death Row medallion. On the surface, it looked like a small robbery, just jewelry. But in street culture, it was a public disrespect, a message, a challenge. And challenges demand responses. Tupac didn't hesitate. Surrounded by Suge Knight and Death Row members, he confronted Anderson. Words were exchanged, then fists flew. The entire assault was caught on casino surveillance cameras. Grainy footage, chaotic movement, but clear enough to show Tupac throwing the first punch. What many people still don't understand is that this wasn't random violence. This was built tension. Months of quiet anger between West Coast power players and rival factions. In the street ecosystem, ignoring disrespect is worse.
Did you actually see a gun?
No, once he got the region, I got the junkie.
So someone from your car
That's what happened.
started shooting at Tupac and Shook.
Them losing. And that night, Tupac chose confrontation. Security broke it up. Police were nearby. But no one was arrested. Everyone walked away. Or so it seemed. Hours later, Tupac rode in a black BMW with Suge Knight through the Las Vegas streets. Music played. Windows were down. Tupac was relaxed, even laughing. He had no idea that retaliation was already in motion. At a red light on Flamingo Road, a white Cadillac pulled up. 4 men inside. The window rolled down. And in seconds, bullets tore through the car. Tupac was hit multiple times. Suge was grazed. The Cadillac disappeared into the night. 6 days later, Tupac Shakur was gone. No arrests, no convictions. Just rumors, theories, and finger-pointing. East Coast versus West Coast. Bad Boy versus Death Row. Biggie versus Pac. The media fed the narrative. The streets whispered their own version. And the truth stayed buried. For nearly 30 years, investigators chased shadows. Witnesses went silent. Evidence dried up. Some people died. Others disappeared. And the case became hip-hop's greatest unsolved crime. Until a voice appeared. Years later, a hidden tape recording surfaced. A quiet confession. A man explaining what really happened that night. Not speculation. Not gossip. A first-hand account. The kind that makes your stomach drop when you hear it.
So they offered me a deal, yeah, that deal. And I didn't know they was gonna have a tape recording, and they said there was no tape recording.
Right. Well, I interviewed Greg Kading about it. He said that he had a hidden tape recorder.
According to that recording, the shooting was retaliation, direct and immediate. The MGM Grand beating wasn't forgotten. It was answered. Street rules were followed exactly as they had been written for decades. The tape described the shooter, the car, the motivation, and most importantly, it confirmed what many had suspected but could never prove, that Tupac's fate was sealed. The moment fists flew in that casino lobby, this wasn't about music anymore. It was about pride, about gang loyalty, about a cycle that never forgives public humiliation. What makes this story even more tragic is that Tupac was already talking about change, about growth, about leaving some of the chaos behind. But the streets don't move on the same schedule as artists. Once a line is crossed, there's no rewind. The confession on that tape didn't just reveal who pulled the trigger. It exposed how thin the line was between fame and fatal consequences. How hip-hop, at that moment in history, was deeply tied to real street politics, not just lyrics and images. And maybe the hardest truth of all is this: Tupac didn't die because of a conspiracy. He died because of a moment, a choice, a reaction inside a casino lobby that echoed louder than any song he ever recorded. The night Las Vegas changed hip-hop forever wasn't planned, but its outcome was inevitable. And even now, decades later, when that hidden recording plays, it doesn't just tell us who did it. It reminds us that some legends burn so bright, they don't get time to fade. Imagine this for a second. Two young men from completely different worlds, both chasing the same dream, both changing hip-hop forever, but slowly walking toward a destiny neither of them could escape. What if I told you that one night in New York, 5 guns...
I knew Pac and Biggie loved each other. When I was in the hotel, Pac in the hotel, and he talking to Biggie before Pac passed away. He wasn't mad at Biggie like, I hate this motherfucker. He was more hurt because he felt that Biggie had something to do with the shooting studio in New York. And they was talking, I could tell it was two men that cared about each other.
Shots didn't just hit Tupac Shakur's body. They changed the entire future of hip-hop, created the most famous rivalry in music history, and set off a chain reaction that would end with two legends dead before the age of 30. And to this day, no one truly knows the full truth. Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. were once friends, laughing together, supporting each other, dreaming together, but that friendship didn't survive jealousy, fear, rumors, and silence. Tupac's anger toward Biggie didn't come from one song or one interview. It came from a deep sense of betrayal that began in November 1994, at Quad Recording Studios in Manhattan. When Tupac walked into that building expecting to record music and walked out shot 5 times, bleeding, robbed of $40,000 worth of jewelry, and forever changed as a man, Tupac believed, whether right or wrong, that Biggie and people around him knew the attack was coming and did nothing to stop it. And that belief ate him alive from the inside. No court ever proved Biggie's involvement, and Biggie always denied knowing anything. But in Tupac's mind, silence was guilt, and guilt meant betrayal. That single night turned paranoia into fuel, pain into anger, and friendship into war. Tupac survived the shooting, but he didn't survive what it did to his trust. While recovering, he was arrested and later sent to prison on sexual abuse charges. And from behind bars, he watched Biggie's career explode. Songs climbing charts, fame growing. While Tupac felt forgotten, replaced, and mocked by fate itself. When Tupac was released from prison in 1995 after Suge Knight posted a $1.4 million bail, he didn't come back as the same artist. He came back harder, louder, angrier, and surrounded by Death Row Records, a label that thrived on aggression, loyalty, and public dominance. This was the beginning of...
When you look at Big Murder, do you believe he came to LA too soon after Tupac got killed?
I don't know the temperature, but I can give my opinion. And the reason why I say I don't know the temperature, because I was already in the county jail.
The death row era. And Tupac fully embraced the role of a soldier in a war he believed had already been declared. His music changed, his interviews became sharper, his words more threatening, and every lyric felt like a warning shot. Songs weren't just art anymore, they were weapons, and Tupac used them without fear. The East Coast versus West Coast rivalry, which had existed quietly for years, suddenly had a face, a voice, and a heartbeat, and that heartbeat was Tupac Shakur. Biggie, on the other hand, remained mostly silent, refusing to fully engage, choosing success and music over public conflict. But silence doesn't always calm the fire. Sometimes it makes it burn hotter. Tupac took Biggie's silence as proof that he was right all along, and with every diss track, every interview, every headline, the gap between them became impossible to close. Then in September 1996, in Las Vegas, after attending a Mike Tyson fight, Tupac was shot again. This time in a drive-by shooting on the Las Vegas Strip, and 6 days later, the voice that had shaken the world went silent forever. Tupac was just 25 years old. The murder was never solved, no arrests, no convictions, only theories, rumors, and shadows that...
Biggie was killed by an associate of Suge Knight's. He hired a guy named Poochie to track down Biggie at the Peterson Auto Museum in March of 1997 and wait for him outside, and he pulled alongside and shot into the side of the car and killing Biggie.
Still follow hip-hop today. And just when the world was trying to process the loss of Tupac Shakur, tragedy struck again. 6 months later, on March 9, 1997, Christopher Wallace, known as the Notorious B.I.G., attended the Soul Train Music Awards in Los Angeles, followed by an after-party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. The night felt celebratory, almost hopeful, as if the war might finally be cooling down, but as Biggie left the party in his SUV, a dark vehicle pulled up beside him at a red light, shots were fired, and within minutes, Biggie Smalls was dead at just 24 years old. To kings, to coasts, to unsolved murders. And one question that refuses to die, was this all inevitable, or could it have been stopped? The deaths of Tupac and Biggie didn't just end to lives. They froze an entire era of hip-hop in time, turning music into myth and artists into legends. Fans still analyze lyrics, interviews, body language, searching for hidden messages, missed warnings, and clues that might finally explain what really happened. Some believe the industry failed them, others blame street politics, while many say ego, fear, and misunderstanding pulled the trigger long before any gun did. What's undeniable is that Tupac and Biggie were more alike than different. Both poets of pain, storytellers of struggle, young men carrying the weight of their environments on their shoulders, trying to survive fame while still healing old wounds. Their story is not just about rivalry. It's about how quickly love can turn into hatred when trust is broken, how silence can be louder than words, and how unresolved pain can echo for decades. Even today, nearly 30 years later, their music still speaks, their faces still inspire, and their deaths still ask us uncomfortable questions about loyalty, power, and the price of fame. Maybe the real tragedy isn't that Tupac and Biggie died young, but that they never got the chance to sit in the same room, clear the air, and realize that the war was built on fear, not truth. And that's why this story still matters. Because it reminds us that legends aren't born from perfection. They're born from pain, and sometimes the greatest losses come not from enemies, but from broken friendships that were never healed. Stop scrolling, because what you are about to hear is not a rumor, not a theory, and not another internet story. It is a truth that stayed hidden for almost 3 decades. For years, people whispered about who was responsible for the deaths of Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G. The streets talked, the industry hinted, and the fans felt it in their hearts. But officially, there was silence. Now, that silence is breaking. Names are being spoken, roles are being revealed, and history is finally being forced to tell the truth. But when truth comes this late, it does not feel like victory. It feels heavy. It feels painful. And it makes us ask a deeper question.
Well, all the stuff that you said on tape, and I've listened to all the tapes, you said that not one person went to jail behind it.
Exactly.
You also said that you saved a lot of motherfuckers from going to jail for extremely long sentences with your cooperation.
And did justice really arrive? Or did it arrive too late to matter? This moment is both a revelation and a reminder. A revelation because it finally puts faces and responsibility to crimes that were open secrets for decades. Everyone knew something was wrong, but nobody had the power or courage to say it out loud. A reminder because justice delayed is never the same justice we imagine. Time changes everything. Evidence disappears. Memories fade. People die. And when the truth finally comes, it comes transformed, weakened by the years that passed without answers. For those who loved Tupac and Biggie, this moment feels confusing. These were not just rappers. They were voices of a generation. People grew up with their music. Their songs played during late nights, hard times, first dreams, and deep pain. Tupac spoke with raw emotion about injustice, struggle, and inner conflict, like someone who already knew his time was limited. Biggie told stories with smooth confidence, turning street life into art, showing both the beauty and danger of success. Together, they changed hip-hop forever. When they were killed, it was not just 2 lives that ended. Something bigger died with them. Hip-hop lost its innocence. Fame stopped feeling safe. Music turned into a battlefield. Fans were left with questions that never got answers. Who did this? Why did it happen? And could it have been stopped? For years, theories replaced facts. East Coast versus West Coast became a headline instead of a warning. The industry kept moving, making money while the cases stayed cold. Silence became normal, and time quietly took away the chance for real accountability. Now, decades later, legal proceedings try to offer closure. But closure after so much time feels empty. The men who pulled the triggers are either dead or aging. Some of the key players are gone forever. Others are shadows of who they once were. Prison sentences now feel symbolic instead of meaningful. Nothing can bring Tupac back. Nothing can bring Biggie back. And nothing can return the futures we never got to see. The industry that helped create the conditions for their conflict has completely changed. Back then, rivalry was real, dangerous, and fueled by ego, media, and money. Today, conflict lives online, hidden behind screens and clicks. The world moved on, even if the wounds never fully healed. What remains
everywhere? They were saying he was bragging about it. And then after Tupac actually died, 6-7 days later, and he kind of shut his mouth after that, but he was bragging about it at first to some of his homies.
Now are not court victories, but memories. Albums that still sound alive. Lyrics that still feel relevant. Interviews where you can hear dreams, fears, and warnings hidden between smiles. Old video footage that freezes Tupac and Biggie at the height of their power, forever young, forever unfinished. Tupac was only 25 years old. Biggie was just 24, ages when life is supposed to begin, not end. That is what hurts the most. Not just their deaths, but the lives they never got to live. The music they never got to make. The growth we never got to witness. Their voices still matter because the problems they talked about never disappeared. Poverty, injustice, pressure, identity, survival. That is why new generations still discover their music and feel understood. That is why their deaths still hurt people who were not even born when it happened. This revelation forces us to remember what was lost. Not just to artists, but to futures. We will never know what Tupac would have become at 40. A leader, a filmmaker, a revolutionary voice. We will never know how Biggie would have evolved. A mentor, a mogul, a legend who grew old. That unanswered future is the real tragedy. Justice may finally be speaking, but it is speaking to a room full of ghosts. It can name the silence. It can admit the delay. But it cannot heal what time has already taken away. For fans, the real closure may not come from courtrooms. It comes from pressing play. From remembering how these voices made us feel seen, understood, and alive. They remain forever young, forever powerful, forever unfinished. And maybe that is how legends are meant to live. If this story meant something to you, click on any of the cards on your screen and keep remembering what the world lost. As time moves forward, one painful truth becomes clear: history does not wait for justice. Life continues, cultures change, and generations grow up without fully understanding what was taken from them. Tupac and Biggie became symbols, not because they died young, but because they lived honestly. Their words carried weight. Their presence demanded attention. And when they were gone, the silence they left behind was louder than any verdict. Many people ask why this story still matters today. Why reopen wounds? Why talk about deaths that happened so long ago? The answer is simple. Because unresolved truth shapes the future. When accountability is avoided, the same patterns repeat. New artists enter the industry with dreams, unaware of the history beneath their feet. They chase success without knowing how dangerous the road once was, and in some ways, still is. Tupac warned the world many times. Not directly, but through emotion, through anger, through vulnerability. He spoke about being trapped between hope and reality. Biggie, in his own way, showed how success could lift you up while slowly closing in around you. Their music was not just entertainment. It was documentation. A record of what it meant to survive in a system that rewarded ambition but ignored protection. The tragedy is not only that they were killed, but that the warning signs were ignored. The media treated their conflict like a game. Fans picked sides instead of asking deeper questions. And the industry watched as tension grew because tension sold records. Nobody stopped the train.
I built the West Coast sound. I say that's Death Row. And then we was already there. And it was because of the fact that my background is sports.
Everyone assumed someone else would. Now, years later, the system tries to clean up the mess it once allowed. Investigations reopen. Statements are made. Documents are released. But the emotional cost has already been paid by families, friends, and fans. Mothers buried sons. Children grew up without fathers. A generation lost its heroes. This is why closure feels hollow. Because closure usually brings peace. And here, peace feels impossible. You cannot undo death. You cannot rewind time. You cannot give back what was stolen. All you can do is tell the truth and hope it prevents future loss. What makes Tupac and Biggie different from many others is that they never faded. Their relevance did not depend on trends. Their words still feel alive. When you listen today, it feels like they are talking about now. That timelessness is rare and it is powerful. It proves that they were more than victims. They were thinkers. They were artists who understood the world better than many adults twice their age. As fans, remembering them is an act of respect. Not just celebrating the music, but understanding the context. Understanding the pressure, the manipulation, the loneliness that comes with fame. Understanding that behind every legend is a human being who needed protection, not provocation. The industry today often pretends it has learned its lesson. But exploitation still exists. Artists are still pushed toward controversy. Trauma is still packaged as content. And that is why these stories must be told honestly, without glamour, without excuses. Tupac and Biggie did not choose to become cautionary tales. They wanted to live. They wanted to grow. They wanted to evolve. That choice was taken from them. And the least the world can do is remember them truthfully. In the end, justice is not just about punishment. It is about acknowledgement. It is about admitting that failures happened. That systems failed. That silence protected the wrong people for too long. When that acknowledgement finally arrives, even late, it carries meaning. Their lives remind us that talent does not guarantee safety, that success does not cancel danger, and that voices speaking